The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hand the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
It begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
That you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Well, we did it. We made it through the intro. That's always the hardest part. Now we're here.
That's a trippy intro, yo. That's creative. That's a piece of art right there.
I mean, honestly, coming from Jesse Nickell the fourth, who is one of my favorite artists in the world, and also a guy living in China, just to introduce you to the people who don't know yet. That's actually pretty high praise. I appreciate that a lot.
That's creative. That's very creative. It's interesting. I was thinking you could put your face over my face for the whole interview.
And likewise, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know?
And
I know
we could
you've
switch
always
our faces.
You've always been kind of like you're a solid artist, but you've not been much of a narcissist. That's not you've lost in the narcissism gap, I think, in that war. That wasn't your strong suit. You weren't always like, look at me. You know what I mean? That's like a thing about you. Am I wrong? What do you think?
Well, I think I don't know, painting another narrative about myself. Let's see. I think I definitely have had narcissistic, tendencies or thought processes rolling through my mind. And I think as I was younger, I would exhibit them and express them vocally and probably through my actions. Hopefully I'm doing that less now, because
I've never found you to be a narcissist. The music you make even talks about, like, kind of a bigger picture kind of thing. You're always a bigger picture guy. I don't know. I mean, not to take away, I appreciate that you're saying that, though. It sounds like you're always. So
I aspire to be I aspire to be a bigger picture guy. I hope I'm trying to move in that trajectory. But I have lots of flaws, and I'm sure that there's narcissistic tendencies still mixed up inside of my DNA and my genetics and my mind and my spirit, or whatever you want to say, whatever words work for you. But
I don't know if it's all that bad. I mean, I think you're kind of my point there, I think, is like you deserve to be seen and heard. You're an interesting person. I've known you for a long time. You come from the same town. We've seen a lot of crazy things in our lives, and the kinds of things that you've always, the perspective you've brought to a thing is always like an uplifting thing. I've listened to your songs on SoundCloud so many times, just like,
thank you,
needing some sort of a philosophical awakening, you know what I mean, just to put myself back in place. There's a number of things that you've been through, though, so I don't know, maybe you want to explain, like, how did you end up going to China, because you've been living there for a while. How long have you been living in China? Let's start with that. How long have you been living in China?
That's a good question. In total, I think I've been living in China for almost 6.5 years now, I think. Yeah. Wow. Wait, no, that's wrong. Almost 6 years. No,
it's like half of the animals.
5.5 years. Yeah.
Man, so like you're the horse, you're the dog, you've been living through all the animals. You're almost to the halfway cycle.
Yeah, the Chinese zodiac. I guess I never thought about that, but yeah, I'm going through them 1 year
Wow.
at a time.
Yeah, do you think there's anything to like synchronicity of calendar and zodiac and all that stuff? Like obviously for thousands of years they used it for something, but does it affect your life, or is time are you outside of time?
I'm definitely open-minded to the possibilities. I don't dabble too much in Chinese zodiac, so I don't know too much about it, and I can't really speak on it but I'm totally open to it. I would have to. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
That's fair. I mean, I don't
it's
know, because
possible.
it doesn't seem like it's like the old mythology matters as much as it used to. I mean, it's important, but it's like you've got new symbols, you've got new realities that you've shifted through. What brought you to China? Like, why did you go?
I think, China right now in the historical timeline is a very important nation, relatively speaking. Um, uh, it's got a huge population. It's got a huge economy. It's affecting the world in many different ways, economically. Um, it's affecting the world environmentally, but I think it's just an important place right now. So that's kind of what pulled me in as a magnet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you came in on the ground floor of the new world being built as everything is changing, all the new technologies, all the things that they're shifting in the world. You're in the future in a lot of ways, and you came from Silicon Valley, kind of, Santa Cruz area. Like, what is your life story? You go by Jesse Nickell the fourth. So what does that mean to you? Like, what are you, who did you come from?
Yeah. My narrative for myself right now, which if I don't die anytime soon, will probably change.
Right.
To keep it as short as I possibly can. Well, probably will space out and forget that I'm trying to keep this short. It might be longer than I'd like it to be, but my current narrative is like mom's side, more kind of coming from a Catholic conditioning, and dad's side having some kind of like Christian conditioning, but also kind of diverging away from that. And then my parents, both of them, kind of diverged away from religion in their own personal journeys to some degree, but obviously have their own kind of, everyone has their own kind of stuff that sticks in their minds, I guess, from all of our different conditioning and education and cultural environment, and just the words sticking in our brains and the ideas. But anyways, they had some kind of divergence with that, and part of that was the hippie culture. I don't know what percentage of them you would consider them to be hippies, but they're to some degree or another hippies. And
Right.
then they kind of wanted to raise me and my brother, Oliver, in a relatively non-religious condition. But obviously you have a very kind of Judeo-Christian culture and historical background that America is kind of like entrenched into some degree or another, depending on what kind of pockets you're being grown up in as a child there. But yeah, I don't know. We were surrounded by some kind of more free-spirited kind of hippies. And how can I fast forward the story? My dad kind of liked extreme sports, like motocross racing. So then he got me and my brother in like motorized vehicles, dirt bikes, quads, three-wheelers when we were young. And did a lot of bike racing. My dad also was really interested in college in the arts, music, and surrealism, painting, drawing, but he didn't go all the way with art. He kind of felt it'd be a safer path to go with kind of construction. So he became like a construction vice president for a construction company.
It's like the swooped up home improvement, he's the Tim Allen to Toolman Taylor, builds cars and awesome house stuff,
Yeah, he's a very, very like high-endy man. Like he knows a lot. he can do a lot with his hands, and he's creative, and he's very well socially versed. He's very good at like getting along with other people, which is interesting, like the dynamic between, because I feel more of a hermit personally,
Yeah,
and he's much of a social butterfly. So it's kind of an interesting yin yang situation there for father and son, in my opinion. But yeah, how can I fast forward the story? Anyways, me and my brother definitely were inspired by his kind of like motocross and BMX and mountain biking and the kind of extreme sports thing, and his creative inclinations of music. He was in different bands making music, doing different paintings, really influenced by Salvador Dali and the surrealist movement. So and a lot of kind of more surreal type of artists, music artists. Yeah, how can I fast forward this? Yeah, anyways, all that influenced me to become who I am. And then Santa Cruz culture definitely influenced me. The hippie culture influenced me. And then I think, my good friend Spencer Winnick, who lives in Santa Cruz, he said that like I had several LSD trips, and he kind of like, from his perspective, he thinks I kind of make it into a bigger deal than most people make their LSD trips into. But basically I had like a very kind of critical perception on religion, and especially Judeo-Christian kind of religions, kind of monotheistic, believing in one God religions. I was hypercritical of it. But after those kind of LSD trips, I was very opened up to possibilities. Like either on one hand, I was just having a lot of hallucinations while I was having those experiences, or on the other hand, I was having insights to possibly a spiritual kind of reality that exists, which I was not privy to before I had taken LSD. So ultimately, I don't know how reality functions and what's really going on the underlying levels, but that whole experience of those kind of several LSD experiences shattered my pre-existing convictions on how reality existed, and really opened me up to spiritual possibilities, or really a lot of just what I don't know anymore. And also it kind of brought in a lot of really weird trains of thought that I wasn't either having before or I wasn't aware of before, that was going on in my consciousness, or my mind stream, my spirit, or whatever your brain, whatever you want to call it. And I was really struggling to grapple with the new turmoil that was either arising in me mentally, or that I'd become now aware of, that was already existing within my mind or my soul or my brain or whatever you want to call it. So I was kind of, from being open to spirituality, then forced to try to take refuge in something that could kind of bring me to some kind of place of peace of mind, because I was such a mess inside. And I had never really felt like such a mess. And I think I dabbled in studying a lot of different religions and philosophies, but mostly gravitated towards Buddhism, and still do to this day. But yeah, I could say more, but for now, I think that's enough. And sorry if that was too long, but
never be, man. That's the thing. You're a special kind of guy. I don't want to like mess with your process. You know what I mean? Here's some art, by the way, from Jesse. And you can see it's a pretty specific style, but it's got a lot of the things you just heard mentioned from Dali, even Escher. There's a lot to the gestalt of the art that you do. Here's a couple other examples. I know you have newer stuff as well out there, but you've also done like a lot of music. I don't know if this is the right let me see, don't I have this somewhere? Jesse Nickell, it's like Bandcamp or SoundCloud. Where do I go?
SoundCloud.
Yeah.
SoundCloud. Yeah,
that's right. I don't know, believe in a creator. That's pretty good stuff. Boom.
I actually just released a song yesterday. That's like
Oh,
an
really?
old song. Yeah, Ground in Greed.
Oh, I haven't even heard this yet. So I have to check that out. So that's pretty awesome. So you've been doing a lot of art and music, and like your family, your dad's an artist, your brother's an artist too. Your dad's an extrovert. Your brother's pretty much an extrovert as well. Do you feel like you're inhibited by being an introvert, or do you think it's really important to your process to make the kind of art that you make, and the kind, the kind of profundity in content?
I think part of it is just when I'm spending time with others, we're doing things together, and maybe part of it is my selfishness and my lack of ability to compromise and my stubbornness. Like there's just things I want to do, and I often think about how I'm going to die, and I don't know when I'm going to die, so I have a limited amount of time. So I want to try to focus on doing the things I want to do. So then especially with a girlfriend, now I'm living with a girlfriend named Zoe.
Awesome.
You need to make a certain amount of compromise to maintain relationships, and with friendships or socializing, you're making compromises. You have to find things that are similar to do. And my mental tendency often is like, I want to be making art right now. I want to be meditating right now. I want to be making music right now. I want to make a movie right now. I want to be doing some 3D modeling right now. And that's, I don't know, for whatever reason, I often want to be doing that alone. Yeah.
So what do you get from doing art alone that, I can already think of, like, if you're building a sitcom, there's gonna be a bunch of people that want to change your sitcom, right? So like, what happens when you do art alone?
Yeah, I think I forget about everything, and it's just off. I mean, there are times when the process of making art can be super unfun, but there's a lot of joy in it for me. Just trying to either bring about new concepts from developing other people's concepts and mixing things together, or taking ideas that are developing inside of my imagination, or just kind of making new things up and seeing whatever happens. And it's more subconscious, but I don't know. It's probably a form of an addiction or obsession, but I just like doing it a lot, and it's a strong habit. It's a strong tendency, and that could change with time. But right now, I just like coming back to it, and I have a strong desire to keep creating.
Yeah, and you started also wanting to do podcasts yourself, and I thought these were pretty interesting. You got Nathaniel Gutenberg and Khan, and you've been doing these talks that are kind of deep and philosophical. Like, what is your goal right now with these podcasts? What are you trying to bring out in the world?
I think when I talk with certain friends, I go on and on and on, and a lot of it is philosophy kind of driven, just talking about different concepts. So why not try to share that? And part of it is like, I don't really know why I'm doing it. Part of it is I want to just see where it organically goes, or doesn't go, if it doesn't work out, and I'm not into it anymore, and just let go of it. And another part of it is, having some kind of symbiotic dialogue where we're developing new concepts with different individuals, focusing on their strengths and trying to work on developing new ideas and pushing the human mind together, working on that to some degree. I don't know, perhaps that's too egocentric of me to say, but that's the aspiration, to try to work on developing different ideas, and hopefully that will have positive ramifications and ripple effects on those who listen to it, potentially, hopefully future generations, or at the very least, it can act as a kind of recorded capturing of that individual, and then when they die, their family members or people that are interested in the things they were talking about can go back and look at it because they're interested in it, or Yeah, I think that's all I can say.
I think
Yeah.
it's funny because it's like, I mean, this is totally true. And I feel like you of all people, you're saying, oh man, I shouldn't be egocentric. I should be careful about making a podcast for these reasons. But you come to the logical conclusion that it's one of the best things you can do is bring people together, communicate with them, try to understand different sides of things, have the steel man, have things heard. I wonder about some of your philosophical thoughts, for instance. Do you think language drives thought? Do you think it's language, or do you think that do you think we're building a new replacement of language with video, or is that real?
Oftentimes in different Buddhist teachers will talk about how there's different vehicles of communication, like a painting could be a form of a vehicle that drives certain truths home to minds that view the painting. And I feel like painting is an invention by humans, and whatever forms of technology in the future that are innovated by human or robots or whatever kind of creatures or things are in the future, those things will be vehicles for delivering ideas. I don't know. Yeah. Does that answer?
I mean, no, I think it's fair, but like, then I wonder, a further question is like, do you think that you can send a memory to someone through neural link at some point? And what's the difference between, that experience and the meta tags? We were talking earlier to a guy about the idea that language is code, right? So you're getting these references that someone's already processed on the, CMOS scanner. You're getting the broken down last little, it's not all the data. Versus if you get the entire data from that, right? I mean, is language going to be replaced with actual neural memory exchange, or do we need language?
I honestly don't know. What do you think? I have no clue.
Good spin. I think it's a hard one because it'll change everything, right? That's the obvious thing. What would happen is it would change everything. Someone send us a super chat. We got John Burt says, even mammoth gorilla chicken hybrids can smash that like button. And I agree, everybody, smash that like button. But okay, if you replace the whimsical poetry of word, which is describing things, with the actual things itself, I mean, is that it's a completely different thing, right? So what if you don't use descriptions? Everyone has to feel it, right?
So then would the memories that are being transitioning from one mind to another mind be encapsulated in feelings? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's senses. And then that's a question, because if you have different hormones, if you're processing the senses differently, could it ever be the same?
Yeah. And in some schools of Buddhism, they refer to emotions or feelings and even intuitions, which are often not a structure that's formulated in the structure of words, as the mind itself. They're not two different separate things. Like emotions, intuitions, feelings, and mind are synonymous. So in that sense, because like oftentimes in certain Western thinking, the mind and the emotions are two separate phenomenons. But I don't know. I don't know.
That's really useful information, actually. Go on.
Yeah, I don't have anything more to say.
No, it's good. My thought, so you saying emotions being part of the mind, that's a huge part. So I was talking to Blake Lemoyne's, whistleblower from Google on Lambda, and a big thing is Buddhism and Eastern philosophy in terms of pathology and psychology. This idea of the mind as opposed to just the brain and it's like pieces, but more as the holistic function. Well, that's part of the idea of a substrate independent mind. If the mind doesn't have to run in the human body, but can be a process that's going through, then emotions are changes to the mind, changes in algorithm, changes in priorities, or things like that, which might be driving bodily feelings, but the bodily feelings might be separate from the mind in that respect.
So in that respect, would the robots or the AI not have any feelings? I guess, yeah.
I mean,
And
it
then
feels like
what,
they might have feelings because it's just changes in priorities, though, right? Because if you're like, I worry now about running out of battery, then you prioritize dealing with that sooner, which is it's kind of like a feeling based response.
yeah. And I guess one thing is like with Hindu traditions and Buddhist traditions, like the Hindu traditions, it seems like they lose their sense of self by merging into the oneness of everything, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the
Sorry
mind,
if I'm
the mind and brain might lose memories in the ego death transformation, right?
yeah. And then from the Buddhist perspective, the self gets kind of dismantled, and then you're kind of that empty mind where there's no sense of self at an ultimate level. Conventionally, you're still there, but like, will the can there be unenlightened AI and enlightened AI? Can like that does the AI have a sense of self, and then will it have the desire to lose the sense of self? And
I feel like that's a logical progression though, right? But I wonder,
yeah.
would it, oh man, because it has to build a self in order to lose itself to the greater consciousness. But then what are we building then? For instance, if you can experience if you can remember when you call upon them all of your father, grandfather, great grandfather's memories, right? Like what happens when all of a sudden you're not a tabula rasa and you have no blank slate because it's always printable? You can remember everything.
Yeah, I feel like if I could remember everything, it's so much history. I don't know. Would that be like overwhelming, or like,
Right.
I don't know. And then there's like, I'm 31 now. There's so many years and moments and seconds of history, but a lot of the time I forget about it all. I just don't even think about it. So I I wonder, like, I don't know, maybe some of those memories or feelings are encoded into the genetics, or maybe there's like, and then, but we don't really think about that too much, because either we're functioning on those feelings and that information subconsciously, or it's just not necessary to bring that information or those feelings to the foreground in order to function in the way that we need to in this moment.
Like could there be an Akashic record YouTube? Like could we get to the point where most of the memories are just, we connect to them online and we can disconnect?
I'm totally open-minded to the possibility. Yeah, I have no clue.
You think
I
that
think
what would that do to us though, right?
I don't know. I think obviously there's a lot of people that are debating that there is or is not past lives. If there's some kind of way that you could have evidence to prove that there is past lives, then you wouldn't have to argue about that, and then you would be functioning in life in a way that you understand that there's going to be future lives, and then does this life have consequences on one's own future life? If it does, then you'd probably be functioning in a different way than if you were functioning from a paradigm that this is a single YOLO kind of experience. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, okay, so you're Buddhist to an extent, right? Or do you believe in reincarnation?
Yeah, I think I take reincarnation as kind of the lens of perception most of the time. I don't know if it's real or not, but that's generally how I function from.
Yeah. So what does it mean? So help us understand Buddhism, from a practical level, what reincarnation really is supposed to be and why. Or if you know.
Yeah, I think first off, as a disclaimer, if you're really interested in this stuff, go and do research, and don't just listen to one person, listen to 1,000 different people.
Yeah. Get that silk handkerchief with 5 knots and untie the 5 knots in order, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I personally think that if there is reincarnation and that's how life works, then just like today has ramifications on tomorrow, as far as my reputations are concerned, and as far as what I can kind of manifest in this world, and how kind of the trajectory of my personality is moving in life, then if reincarnation is real, then it'll kind of function in a similar way as yesterday, today, and tomorrow, last life, this life, next life. So just, I think if it is real, then one would probably have more of an inclination to develop their mind more, because they're probably not going to be able to take any kind of physical things with them, any siblings or friends or family members or anything with them. They're going to go on to the next life tomorrow. So they'll probably work on their mind more, because that's the thing that continues, and they'll probably want to develop those qualities which will have beneficial effects for themselves and others, I would assume. I don't know.
That's an interesting concept, as the mind transcendent, because the brain might not be, the memories might not be, but the thought flow and patterns, right, can be imprinted. How do you suppose that's supposed to be? You know, is it working that the spirit, the soul is going, and does it go around the world? Does it go into the next nearest place to it, like lightning? Or, you know, what's the protocol there?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different schools of Buddhist thought, and how they kind of talk about it is a little bit different in each way. But the best kind of creative way I could explain it, based on what my bias is to believing, would be like the individual has a whole entire process of past decisions and causes and conditions that they've kind of been accumulating, and also certain effects have been arising, and karma for them has been arising. So then they're burning off past karmas, but based on their previous decisions and choices, they're also creating future karmas for themselves. And when they die, their body will start to break down, and it will eventually not function any longer. And from the Buddhist perspective, the consciousness, or the mind, which is separate from the physical system, will be kind of launched in the trajectory of the tendencies of the mind, and like all the different habits that it's been creating. In addition to that, kind of like all the good deeds that the individual has been doing, or the bad deeds, or the neutral deeds, those kind of karmas will be kind of connected with the mind, and will be launched with the mind. And that will depend on where the mind is getting launched to. For me, I'm assuming, this is like a stretch here, it's perhaps I'm delusional, but I'll just say it anyways, is like there's so many different galaxies and star systems, and potentially there could be a lot more outside of the universe, and who knows what it could exist at microscopic level, metaverses, other kind of dimensions. Who knows? But the mind gets launched to a kind of environmental situation where they're birthed into a certain body, where they're going to continue kind of in the trajectory of those kind of habitual tendencies. And they're going to be born into an environment where they can experience the ripening of some of those karmas that they have kind of created the causes to experience those effects from previous incarnations or previous decisions in past lives. But yeah.
And so we're often not launched into starting whole new universes. I mean, it seems like that's a big thing to happen as well, but people are often launched into families of people that are in the middle of their practices of life and memory, you know, to recondition. Do you think, you think about like the wolf girl, the people who were raised without access to family, and their mind doesn't develop the same, and you can see it in the brain, parts of the muscle neurons don't even develop. What is it that's the phenomena that is the spirit, that is humanity, or that makes us so special? Why are we so special? Why are we trying so hard to keep our karma down that we can stay human or move forward beyond it?
Yeah, from the Buddhist perspective, The humans, I think, like from the Buddhist perspective, all the different like animals have minds in them. So the humans are not necessarily any more special than the ants or the wolves. The human body on this particular planet acts as a vehicle that has, from the Buddhist perspective, a kind of equal balanced amount of pleasure and suffering. And the pleasure is not so overwhelming and the suffering is not so overwhelming for many humans, that it can act as this kind of, this human body can act as a vehicle where the individual is like, I'm not really so stoked to be alive because the pleasure is not like forever and infinite and never ending and always occurring. And the suffering is not so overwhelming that they can't think and do anything, at least for many people. That, I mean, every individual's experience is different. So then they're kind of like in this place between pleasure and pain, and the human's mind faculties are to some degree different than animals. Obviously, we're building spaceships and crazy architecture and AI, and we don't see that happening in other animals, animal species. So from the Buddhist perspective, the human body is a good vehicle for kind of developing spiritually and developing the mind. And it's just the conditions for it, and the experience of being human is a better vehicle for progressing spiritually in the path than the other animal bodies. Not that you can't progress as a dog. You could develop a lot of good karma as a dog, being kind and loving, potentially trying to bark and yell when some little girl maybe is getting stolen by another man or something, and then you're barking allows a neighbor to see the little girl, and then you're creating a lot of good karma there. I don't know.
All those TV news like videos where like the dog rescues from a burning building, like all the kids. Like I've always figured that was the person at some point likely that was trying to do something right. I don't know, it could be wrong, but dogs like that.
It's very possible. Yeah.
But you're talking about good karma, right? And so some people also talk about like alleviating karma, getting rid of the karma, trying to live simply so that others might simply live, etc. Is that better? Are we trying to have good karma, or are we trying to just get rid of, like, stop rocking the boat or the bathwater? Or what's their goal?
I think the ultimate goal is to try to alleviate suffering from other beings. And in doing so, you kind of forget about yourself and how you're being so self-absorbed. And then you, in that process of trying to alleviate suffering in others, I think ultimately that's what is the kind of the aim. But as far as creating more good karma or trying to not create bad karma or trying to get rid of karma, there's different Buddhists that have different thoughts about this and different Hindus that have different thoughts about this. But I think ultimately you want to try to not create bad karma. Neutral karma is kind of a waste of time, but not so bad. And then you'd want to try to create good karma, but ultimately you want to try to develop positive spiritual qualities, mental qualities, mind qualities, which will help you to alleviate suffering in other people's lives. And when your sole aim is to serve others and alleviate suffering, then although you may be suffering on behalf of trying to alleviate the suffering of others, your life becomes more this selfless, meaningful process that that kind of suffering for others is a more blissful form of suffering than just kind of a self-interested, selfish form of suffering or
martyrdom.
Yeah. But this is just me preaching and talking. My girlfriend is very loving and compassionate. I'm kind of just this selfish dude that's on the internet all the time. I should probably try to learn from her and stop talking about all this Buddhist stuff. But yeah.
No, it's pretty based. I mean, I know you were trying to do 20 minutes and we turned it into 40, so I don't know how you are for time, but we could probably do it again also,
Yeah, maybe someday we can do it again. But thank you so much for having me on. Thank you
Yeah,
for this experience.
I got
and,
I got a super chat real quick though that says, can we
Yeah.
buy Jesse's art somewhere? Also rad guest. Thank you both for sharing this intellectually stimulating late night convo. So is that true? Is there a place we can get your art? Where would I lead them?
No, I'm very confused about how, when, or about selling art. So I'm not selling any art, but you can listen
knew
to my
the
art on
answer to this, by the way.
SoundCloud, and you can check out my YouTube and my Instagram, all Jesse Lewis Nickell the Fourth. Yeah, if you're interested.
I'll
Anyways,
pull up the SoundCloud again, but I'll tell you what, dude, like they should definitely email you and just bother you about getting some art sold, because I'm pretty sure if you trick him into it, he'll probably sell you a piece one-on-one, special circumstances, you know what I mean? But yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
it's worth it. I don't know. Well, thank you for coming, man. It's awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. Take care, buddy.
Absolutely.
You're awesome. Thank you.
You're
so
awesome,
much.
dude. Peace.
The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hand the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
Begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
That you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.